Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
5 years ago, I was standing in the middle of an emergency room with somebody I love dearly, dealing with depression, anxiety, and was suicidal.
In this country, your health outcome too often depends on the zip code you live in. But one company is working really hard to fix those inequities. And for their CEO, that's a mission that's deeply personal.
I grew up in poverty, but now I had all these resources and had this moment where I realized, if this were me at 14 living in a trailer in rural North Carolina, I'd be dead or in jail.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Damon Martin is the CEO and co-founder of WellWithAll, a health and wellness company dedicated to advancing health equity for underserved communities. Operating under inclusive capitalism, WellWithAll reinvests 20% of its profits into health initiatives tailored to specific community needs, tackling health disparities and ensuring a targeted approach to wellness. Before WellWithAll, Damon was a senior partner at Adage Capital Management, where he invested in the consumer sector for 21 years. Earlier in his career, he served in the Clinton administration. He served on numerous nonprofit boards, including the Berkeley College of Music, the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and the Obama Foundation. Let's enter the arena with Damon Martin. Damon, welcome to the podcast.
Tom, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, likewise. So I think to frame out the conversation we're going to have about WellWithAll and some of the other stuff you've done, I think it's really important to talk about your background and upbringing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'd love to know, maybe, take us from kind of where you were born, kind of through college. How did you kind of navigate your way around, and tell us kind of your story?
Yeah, happy to. So born in Columbus, Ohio, parents get a divorce, and my mom wanted to pursue brighter pastures and into the California area. But we ended up moving into Inglewood, California during the height of the crack epidemic, and ultimately had a stepfather that was a heroin addict. So as a child, I saw things that kids should never see.
Yeah.
Ultimately moved to North Carolina, where my dad was, moved in with him in a single wide trailer there. And, my life really changed when I went to UNC Charlotte.
Yep.
Where I got great mentorship and exposure and became student body president as a sophomore. And then ultimately, my first job out of college was assistant to the White House chief of staff in the Clinton administration, working for Erskine Bowles.
How did that opportunity come to you? That's so cool.
So my senior year, another former student body president came to visit. I had already gotten a job at Arthur Andersen, which at the time was the largest accounting firm in the world. But
Yep.
I said to her, because she happened to be White House counsel, I said, was there anything I could do for the summer at the White House? And so she said, sure, kid, send me your resume. Got me into an internship working for Al Gore's finance manager. Most people were, political science majors. I was an accounting major, building spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And then that led to a job opportunity working for Erskine Bowles.
Any memorable stories you have about your time there, even though it was fairly brief? It must have been your life went from 0 to 80 overnight, right?
It went from 0 to 1,000. One, when I first met Erskine, he said, come work for me and I'll change your life. And I was like, okay, let's do that. But 6 months into that job, I was living on my fraternity brother's couch in Alexandria, Virginia, driving in every day. And my 1990 Geo Prism breaks down and smoke flying out of it. I have no money and now no way to get to work. Erskine finds out about it and says, I heard about your car. Come live with me. I'm living in this mansion in Georgetown.
Yeah.
And, what that ended up doing was, it created an understanding of the humanity of each other as we got to know each other, riding into work, talking about business or politics, watching a football game. And we realized that we had a lot more in common than not. And he became like my second father. So it was one of those moments where I thought all this despair was happening because I had no car, but
yeah,
I ended up getting a lifetime mentor.
Yeah, and it sounds like with every level kind of up the ladder for you, your eyes are opening and seeing new things. getting perspective on kind of where you came from versus the world that's out there, right? I mean,
That's exactly
very
right.
important for what you're doing right now. And we'll get to that in a minute. But one thing I did want to ask you is what made you aspire to go to Harvard Business School? How did that happen? Because I have to imagine, when you're a sophomore in high school in North Carolina, you probably were like, Harvard Business School, what?
Well, so it was my junior year in college at UNC Charlotte. I'm interning at Arthur Andersen.
Yeah.
My manager came in and said, "Hey, there's this program at Harvard. Do you want to go to it?" And I was like, "Absolutely." When he walked out, I was like, "Where the hell is Harvard?"
Yeah.
But I went there and I got exposure to it, which was the objective of the program, and realized that I could actually thrive in that environment. And so I bought a T-shirt that said Harvard Business School on it, and swore that I would never wear it until I got in. And so
Yeah.
I was able to put it on a couple years later.
That's so badass. So you get out of HBS, and did you know while you were there that you kind of were gravitating to the buy side, or how did that opportunity come to you to get to Adage?
I was interested in finance and actually mostly in private equity.
Yep.
But, I had this viewpoint as I was searching for a job that I wanted to work for somebody that had been extraordinarily successful, that was willing to teach me, respected, what I brought to the table and would enhance my finance skills. And so that could have been in a wide variety of places. And so had my eyes open, talked to a lot of people, hustled my ass off, and then met someone named Phil Gross, who's one of the co-founders of Adage. He was just beginning to spin out a Harvard management company. They hadn't even raised any money yet.
Yeah.
And just found that Phil was one of the most incredible people that I'd ever met, really a savant of an investor. And I wanted to learn from him and offered to work for him for free while I was in business school. And we worked on some projects together and sort of proved myself. And that allowed me to get the job offer to be at Adage, and spent 21 years there, first just learning from Phil and all the other incredible investors, but then had a really incredible career in investing in consumer companies.
Yeah. So working for a hedge fund is no joke. Like personally, I'm not wired for that kind of pressure. Where a lot of times you're tracking stocks like every minute, every hour, every day, every week. What about your personality, your EQ and your IQ was like a really good fit for that?
I think that the work ethic that's required and the discipline, what Phil gave me was sort of a framing of how to think about stocks, how to think about the analysis.
Yep.
But then I worked every Saturday and most Sundays. And, the same work ethic that I had at the White House, although that wasn't rocket science,
Yeah.
you had to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And so I applied, that same effort to thinking about the strategies that Phil it gave me, but also over time, the compounding wisdom that happened from traveling around and meeting all these different companies, and spent a lot of time with the CEOs and CFOs, understanding not just the numbers, but the human behavior, the character of the individual.
Yeah.
And that helped drive really good investment decisions.
How to size people up.
The early part of my life, I had to assess danger.
Yeah.
And, the assessment of humans, the archetypes are pretty similar regardless of what environment you're in. They just manifest in different ways.
Yeah. And so you met with these management teams over a number of years in consumer companies. What investing principles did you really walk away with that stick with you if you had to simplify it?
Under promise, over deliver. Those are the companies that are successful, the companies that understand how to manage their business tightly, don't over promise, not trying to get the glory. Even if their stock goes down, they're not aggressive with their estimates, and they manage their business as well. Those are the businesses that tend to do incredibly well. Even in, sometimes people chase, the fastest growing markets.
Yeah.
There's always extraordinary companies in crappy markets.
Yeah. I've seen so many CEOs over the years, they kind of treat investors almost like customers and tell them what they want to hear.
That's exactly right.
It's like the complete opposite. So I always think with CEOs, and I'd love your opinion on this, it's like it takes an ego to get to the top. But once you're there, you've got to be understanding you don't know everything about everything, and surround yourself with people where you can go around the table like, what do you think? What do you think? And be open and find the right answer. That's a gift.
Yeah, it is. And, you have to have an unwavering optimism,
Yeah.
Right? And at the same time, be really comfortable having a bunch of people around you that are smarter than you.
For sure.
And understanding what you don't know and what you actually do is a really important talent that I think most folks don't have.
Totally agree. And you had a great run there, obviously. Do you have like a stock pick or two that is really memorable to you that, maybe no one else saw and it had like a tremendous run?
I think the greatest one, quite frankly, was Burlington Coat Factory
Interesting.
or Burlington. You know, I had a large investment many years prior to that into TJX.
Yep.
And so understanding the off-price market and also understanding what was happening with the apparel manufacturers, the mall-based retailers and the department stores, how they went from, hyper growth to no growth to contraction. And that meant that the apparel manufacturers that were selling into them had to find other places to sell their product. So you had what I call like a melting iceberg,
Yeah.
where you had this big group of sales that were concentrated in these large retailers that ultimately every year were going to the off-price retailers and Amazon because they were able to offer the same product for a cheaper price point. Burlington was a 10X. And it was also at a point in my career where I was senior enough to be able to make a really, really big bet.
Yeah.
And not only Burlington 10X, but then the other side of the underweight that I had hedging that position, went down dramatically as well. So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's a great one. So throughout your run at Adage, which was a great one, I'm sure you were always thinking about giving back to the community. And that a lot of times when you're busy and you're dedicated, and like you said, you're working 7 days a week, a lot of times that means like stroking a check to people. But what you're doing now is way bigger and far more meaningful. When did this kind of idea hit you that led to WellWithAll? And why did you decide to like put all your chips in and go for it?
The spark of WellWithAll was actually birthed out of tragedy. 5 years ago, I was standing in the middle of an emergency room with somebody I love dearly, dealing with depression, anxiety, and was suicidal. And, you talk about getting your heart ripped out every day for 3.5 years. What I realized with the greatest clarity is that I was on the other side of inequity. Like I grew up in poverty, but now I had all these resources and had this moment where I realized like, if this were me at 14 living in a trailer in rural North Carolina, I'd be dead or in jail. Like those were my two choices. And so many people in this country are in that exact same scenario. And I started thinking about like how I could actually impact health equity in a significant and sustainable way. And my view is that capitalism was the only way to actually do that. Otherwise, I'd have to be out begging for $1 million every year to have impact. And, the Newman Zone model was really sort of a great precursor to our thought process where he gave away $640 million over the life of that brand. And I think that there was opportunity for efficiency and impact. And so WellWithAll is a 2.0 version, quite frankly, of that.
I was excited when Damon brought up the Newman Zone brand. I actually grew up in the same town where Paul Newman lived most of his adult life, Westport, Connecticut, and I don't think he gets enough credit for the philanthropic enterprise that he built. Damon had an interesting take on why that mixture of capitalism and altruism is needed to drive social change.
There aren't enough tax dollars and there's not enough philanthropic capital to actually solve the problems that our country is facing. And so capitalism has to have a role in this as we move forward. And, there's a great saying is self-interest is essential, but selfishness is not. There's an opportunity here, quite frankly, to just build a really extraordinarily big business and help a ton of people.
Yeah, for sure. I heard you say a quote that stuck with me, your zip code shouldn't determine your destiny. For people who kind of just aren't in it every day, talk about some of those zip codes, talk about the community issues. We'll get to the products that you've launched, but there's, a real strategic thought process behind those. I know there's health issues and things like that. Maybe comment on those areas.
So here in Boston, where I am, if you look at Back Bay, which is a wealthy area, 3 miles away from Back Bay is Roxbury.
Yep.
The life expectancy difference in that 3-mile radius is 23 years. If you look at the north side versus the south side of Chicago, it's 30 years. Throughout the country, rural America versus the suburbs, et cetera, there are all of these gaps that exist, and people are living shorter, sicker lives unnecessarily. It's not their DNA that's the determinant of it.
Yeah.
What they're putting in their bodies, the education and the healthcare that they're getting, are driving these differences. And we can actually impact that. We can't solve everything, but we can certainly do something.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're not going to solve anything overnight, but the point is you got to get started somewhere. So tell us about what the business looks like today and, how has it evolved since you founded it?
So one of the people that I invested in like 17 years ago is a guy, Mike Archibald, who was president of Vitamin Shops and then went on and became the CEO at GNC and just had a long career in consumer. He came on with me and my co-founder, Carmichael Roberts. And so the first line that we started with, understanding that health and wellness was the area that we wanted to really address, we started with a line of supplements because that was just easy from a supply chain standpoint, and we could build extraordinary and quality product. From there, we've done some amazing partnerships that allowed us to actually launch this all-natural energy drink, only 80 milligrams of caffeine, same as a cup of coffee.
Yep.
Fast-growing market, but you might say, well, why does a health and wellness company launch an energy drink? Well, one of the highest caloric impacts of the American diet is sugary sodas.
Yep.
And so having an alternative to that, and it tastes fantastic, is just a huge opportunity for us.
Yeah, and I think like having that caffeine dose about the same as coffee, I'm just giving my own opinion. I love that because I've had these other ones where you have like half a can and like they have to scrape me off the ceiling. Like your heart is pumping and you know what I'm saying? Like I don't want that.
Yes.
I don't want that level of, I don't know what to do with it, but I think that's such a, like, talk about like thread the needle in the market of those energy drinks. I think that's exactly where you need to be.
And I had the benefit, right? I've been in this industry for, 21 plus years.
Yeah.
I could actually go and talk to some of the professionals in the market that I've known for years and say, what are you actually missing? What can I do that actually would benefit you and your customer base? And this was one of the areas that made a ton of sense.
Yeah. And, when you're into doing something, inclusive capitalism, philanthropy, your products have to stand on their own regardless of a good cause, right? So
yes.
How'd you get into like Target and Walmart and other large retailers? How'd you break into that channel?
Well, again, we developed extraordinary products, right? Like if you look at every Target store in Chicago, there's these better for you coolers and, WellWithAll energy is in that. There's a separation that's happening in the market, much like I talked about the melting iceberg that you would want to be underweight in the early 2000s in the department store and mall-based retail.
Yep.
The sort of sugary sodas and so forth, kind of fit in that category. And every year there's going to be a seeding of that share, and retailers and distributors alike are looking for folks who can fill that gap.
Yep.
And so we've had an opportunity because we're providing something that they really need and the customers want to have those relationships.
Yep. Well, you've got a long runway ahead of you, and looking out 5 years, kind of what are the 2 or 3 things that you really want to accomplish, and what does success look like for you 5 years from now, let's say?
Yeah, we have a different success mechanism that drives all the key metrics that you would typically think about, but the orientation is different. And I'll take it to 10 years. Over the next 10 years, we intend to put $300 million in the health equity to impact these issues that we've been discussing today. And when you have an underlying sort of vision and purpose, everybody is focused on that. So all of the things that have to happen, but that's the driver. And that's what we'll be judging ourselves, on. And again, it's not, just EPS or profit or sales,
Thank God.
It matters in a much deeper way.
100%. How did you and how are you funding it? I would imagine, with success comes capital needs and all of that. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, the initial capital was me and my co-founder, and then our first investor was Ken Chenault, and we've had, Jonathan Kraft and Jeremy Sklar and David Fialco, who started General Catalyst, and we've had some extraordinary folks to join us, and you'll be hearing about some of the folks who have maybe a more of a celebrity orientation to them that have also joined, which has been pretty cool to just see the diversity of people that not only see the opportunity economically, but also just believe in the construct of what we've developed.
Yeah. I mean, I think for most people, you spend most of your life with your head down trying to have a good life and maybe accumulate resources and stuff. And I have to imagine what you're doing is attracting some super interesting people who, the light bulb goes off and be like, I want to be a part of this, right?
Yeah. It's part of the theme of my book, Friends of the Good. having extraordinary people around you, show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right?
Yeah.
And by being with such incredible people that have been with me in times of despair and success, it's made my life fuller, but it's also allowed me to accomplish a hell of a lot more than I ever dreamed.
Yeah. Are you still on the board of the Obama Foundation?
I am.
What's that like? How'd you get involved with that?
President Obama is just an extraordinary human, and when he asks you to do something like come and help him,
you say yes. Yep.
And it's been a tremendous honor because we've done some really great work, and we're really just getting started. We'll open the Presidential Center there in the South Side of Chicago, and that will be a gathering place of just tremendous magnitude where a lot of great problems will get solved, and tremendous leaders in this time that they're so desperately needed are being developed.
Well, you had a couple of decades at Adage, but I kind of feel like the bookends have been somewhat political. Working at the White House, you get a flavor for that. Being involved with the Obama Foundation, and then obviously giving back. To me, you would have a great background for running for office or doing something like that. This would be incredible news to break on Welcome to the Arena here. But no, seriously, have you ever thought about getting to that? I mean, you think like capitalism is a tough business, like politics is brutal. Do you ever think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think early in my career as I was going into the White House, and then I saw so many lives sort of destroyed for the slightest political gain. I was able to observe, though, folks like my mentor, Erskine Bowles, who ran for office and lost, but was just and is just a tremendous contributor to society.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a wide variety of ways in which you can help. And I've found some areas where I'm good at, and I'm sticking to that. Yes. And if you definitely talk to my wife, you will know that I am not running for office.
Yep. I hear you. Smart man. Throughout this interview, Damon, we talked about mentors that you had, and you just mentioned Erskine a couple of times. Are there any other mentors that you had that just made a really big difference to you?
I've had so many. I've been really, really fortunate. There's this guy, Dr. Herman Thomas, who I met right before my freshman year at UNC Charlotte, who took me under his wing, also took my wife under, who was my girlfriend at the time, under his wing, and just showed us how to be successful, in college. My grandmother, Phil Gross, obviously at Adage, Jim Cash, who was the human that I saw when I went and visited Harvard Business School, and gave me inspiration and clarity that I could be there. There's so many people that have invested in my life, and I've just been incredibly fortunate to have those kinds of people to guide me and support me when I needed it.
Yeah. I don't know you that well, but I have to imagine, in addition to kind of the business that you're in of giving back to those communities, I have to imagine you take what your mentors taught you and mentor your staff accordingly as you grow that business. Like, what an amazing opportunity to pass all that down, those values, inspiration and stuff to your group, right?
Yeah. And I've had a great fortune to work, I worked in the White House under Erskine. I worked at Adage, which has a tremendous culture. Very few people have been in environments where they get to work with all A players.
Yeah.
And, Steve Jobs talked a lot about that. When you get a group of all A players, it becomes sort of a protective mechanism because they don't tend to experience that. So they protect that environment. That's what we've been able to build at WellWithAll. But that was passed on to me from my mentors, and I'm hopefully passing that on to my team as well.
So cool. Well, I have one last self-serving question, which is, I know you're coming down to our 27th annual conference in January, 12th, 13th, 14th in Orlando.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to? You're in the weeds kind of running this business, but you're going to put your Adage hat back on and get into the consumer vibe down there. What are your thoughts kind of heading into 2026? What are you looking for down there?
What I'll say is, I've been going to ICR for over 2 decades, right? And what you all are masterful at doing is bringing together extraordinary people and putting them in a room. And, when you're around extraordinary people, great things happen. So I'm just looking forward to spending time with the bright minds and gaining wisdom from being around the crew, and also making the very clear and distinct point that capitalism can be used for good. and that we all have the opportunity, if not the responsibility, to help the folks who desperately need it in our society.
That was Damon Martin. The company is WellWithAll, and they're leveraging inclusive capitalism to address important issues of fairness and equity in underserved communities. Damon has had an incredible career, and while it's still early days with WellWithAll, they've already seen incredible success. I'll be interested to check back in on their progress in January when I see Damon at the 27th Annual ICR Conference in Orlando, Florida. I'm Tom Ryan, and we'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.